game. Way too much work. This is the work back. Do you want that go? Just go. This is why I came to America. Welcome to another episode of Mattyice and Chief Patrick. We are back. We are here. It is time to talk a little bit more football. For those of you who hopefully are watching, whether live or at a later date, and I suggest you do watch. If you're listening to this on podcast, great, awesome. But I suggest watching because you get to see Patrick make faces when I say ridiculous things, and sometimes vice versa. So that adds an extra layer to this. But if you are watching, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you right now. You see this thing right here? Right here, Patrick?
Oh, I see it. I noticed.
You
Is there
see
a
it?
story behind that?
The story behind that is my 9-month-old daughter headbutted me this morning at church. Split my lip right open. There's a perfect scenario of I had my mouth slightly open, and she uppercutted me with her head, and my tooth went directly into my lip. So if you're out there and you see it and you're like, oh, why does it look like he has chocolate on his lip? We blame that on my daughter.
That would have been the better outcome.
I would love to have some chocolate on the lip. But Patrick, we are here today and we're going to talk. Obviously, we're in our conference preview series, and we've got to talk a little Big Ten. But before we get into the Big Ten, Patrick, you know what we like to do first? We like to talk about our other 5 schools, our G5 schools. And if you listen to last week's show or the week before that, I kind of explained the process of how we group them based off of Matt's version of Pro Rel and NCAA 14, the video game. Big Ten, that means we're going with the MAC this year or this week, so we get a little MACtion in the Power 5. So, Patrick, I'm actually going to let you go first on this. We're going to pick a champion, and we're going to pick a team to watch. So, Patrick, why don't you start off with a champion? Tell me who's going to win the MAC.
Champion for me, probably going to go with Miami of Ohio. They're bringing back their quarterback, Brett Gabbert. I think they're going to have an edge on some of these other teams. Like Kent State probably would have been my favorite, but Dustin Crum is gone. So they're probably going to end up taking a step back. Even though they're going to have a lot of their pieces still there. But I'm going to go with the Red Hawks on this one. They're going to have pretty much everyone back. One of their top receivers, Jack Sorensen's gone, but one of my favorite names in college football, Mac Hippenhammer.
Hippenhammer
is still there. I think Hippenhammer is going to help put the hammer down on the whole MAC.
Okay. I'll let you have it. You're not the dad here, but I'll let you have that joke.
But I mean, they're bringing along with Gabbert and Hippenhammer, like they're bringing about 6 starters. I think most of them are going to be on the offensive line. Their defense is going to be pretty solid. Playing Kent State at home is going to help quite a bit. They're usually towards the top of that conference and that division anyway. So Miami of Ohio is going to be my team. But as far as a team to watch out for, I probably want to go Central Michigan.
Okay.
Going to go with the Chippewas. I think Mac Wentz getting this team on the right track. They've got Daniel Richardson, their quarterback's coming back. They've got Lou Nichols III, who's been a stud at the MAC. And if you play any college fantasy football like I do, that is actually my leading running back, Lou Nichols. I'm going to be watching a lot of Central Michigan this year. But I mean, They got a really solid offense. They scored about 26 points a game in the MAC, where you're getting some gritty, dirty football. That's actually pretty solid. Um, they don't really have a tough conference schedule this year. Um, what I do think is going to hurt them is losing some of their offensive line to the draft, including Bernard Raymond, future starting left tackle for the Colts. But I think this team is going to surprise some people and give this conference a run for its money.
Yeah, they were on my list, and I think you may have said it backwards. You may have had a little dyslexia on it. They averaged 32.3 points a game. I think you said 23.3 points a game. So offense is actually a little bit better than I may have heard wrong. So I actually had them as my second choice of who to watch. I do think the pieces they have to replace on the offensive line might be tough. It's harder to replace that good of offensive linemen sometimes at a smaller school like Central Michigan. So, Patrick, my team to watch, I'll start there. You mentioned it. You mentioned Kent State. I think Kent State's the team to watch because I think two teams that are clear favorites to really win this conference. I don't think Kent State is one of them, but I think they're the outside horse in this race. There's absolutely a chance they're a good enough football team to win the division and ultimately win the conference. But I don't think they're tier 1B, or I guess technically 2A maybe might be a better way to do it. So I think they'll be a very, very good football team, but I don't have them winning. But I do think they are a team to watch. I think they actually I have them being slightly better than Miami of Ohio and actually getting into the MAC championship game, where, Patrick, they are going to lose to my champions, Northern Illinois. I have a soft spot for Northern Illinois ever since Michael the Burner Turner was there. My wife and I have two Huskies, so I'm partial to any team that is named the Huskies as well. They were on my short list of schools that I would have wanted to play college football at. So is this biased? Maybe a little bit in that sense of I just pay more attention to them. This is a team that's bringing back 17 starters on a team that won this conference last year. They lost to Kent State in the regular season, beat them in the MAC title game. So I'm looking at a rematch again of that. Coach Thomas Hammock, who, Patrick, is he the most jovial looking coach? My wife and I were talking about this watching the MAC championship game last year, that he just looks like he's a really, really funny guy. You watch him on the sideline, I go, you know what? He's got to be a player's coach because he just looks like he's hilarious. And I think they're going to continue where they left off last year, and that's being a very good team. There's another team that averaged over 30 points a game, 32.2 points a game. We're bringing back one of the top offensive linemen, or one of the top offensive lines. They were really good on defense last year. Or they weren't great on defense last year, but they're bringing back a bunch of guys. They're bringing all 11 starters back on defense, so you hope that helps. Again, that kind of goes with what is our rule on that. Well, sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes that's a bad thing. I think in this case, I think it's going to be a little bit of a better thing. They're bringing back so many guys. Is it hard to repeat? Sure, but I think this is a team that is built to do that, and you've got Rocky Lombardi. I think he's another guy to keep an eye on in terms of just an outside the top schools guy that can really make some noise. And this Northern Illinois team could be really, really good.
I mean, it definitely helps when you've got that type of experience at quarterback with Rocky Lombardi. They could definitely be scary, especially with that defense, that offensive line being as good as it is. They could definitely give this conference a run for its money, for sure.
Yeah, and look, the MAC is all we joke about it. Everybody jokes about MACtion, but MAC football is a lot of fun to watch, especially on a random Tuesday when you have to, when they're playing, when you've got Bowling Green against Western Michigan, and you just need a football game to watch. That's the football game to watch. It gets you a little Tuesday night action. So we obviously will be paying attention to the MAC. But Patrick, we're here for the big boys tonight, mostly as we have been on this entire series. So let's get straight into the Big Ten. And I guess we're no longer doing leaders and legends, right? They settled on West and East finally.
I think they did. That sounds right.
Yeah, I think they finally switched from those ridiculous names that they once had. If they're still doing it, they need to stop. So I'll leave it at that. So let's get straight into it.
They switched.
Do you want to go West or East first? I'll let you pick.
Let's do East. Actually.
Okay, let's start in the East. So once again, if you're following along, we're going to go alphabetically down the list, and then we'll kind of tell you where we think they're going to finish. And we'll maybe talk about some games, and then we'll do the West, do the same sort of thing. So Patrick, first we get to start with Indiana. So great, awesome. Side note, Patrick, I have to tell you this. I don't know if I ever sent it to you, but I got a gift from a very good friend of mine, and it was a coffee mug. And you know, like those pieces of art that are diagrams of like plays, plays or whatever. I got a coffee mug, Patrick, that is the Bobby Knight throws his chair version of that.
That's incredible.
It's incredible. It has a little chair on it. It shows the chair going across the basketball court. It's awesome. But what is not awesome, Patrick, is this Indiana football team. They went 2-10 last year. Man, I don't see them necessarily getting any better. They're trying to use the transfer portal to build back quick. They lost, obviously, a lot of people. We talked about Michael Penix last week. Was that last week? We talked about him. Yeah, because where's he at now?
Penix is at Washington.
That's right. So 2 weeks ago, we talked about him with Pac-12. They're bringing in Connor Bazelak from Missouri. The offense has got to be a lot better. They were a mess last year. The defense might not be as bad as the offense, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're good either. I like they've got some decent players on defense here and there, especially cornerback Tywan Mullen. They're just not there yet for me.
Well, I mean, this is a team that kind of was one of the darlings of the country just a few years back. What was that, 2019?
Yeah, 2019. I think 2019 we talked about it. We both liked them, and then last year they were really good in the COVID year. They were a really good football team, and then we thought you and I both thought they were going to be very, very good last year, challenge for the Big Ten title, and then they just tanked. Granted, part of that was, of course, Michael Penix being injured, and that went a long way in them not being any good, but they dropped off the map.
Yeah, because 19 they were 8-5. I mean, their losses were like number 6 Ohio State, number 25 Michigan State, number 24 Penn State, which maybe this is what they were ranked. No. Okay, so I think Penn State was number 9 in the country when they lost. So I mean, the loss that they had 19 were top 25 schools across the board. 2020 was the year they were 6-2 with the long loss in the regular season to Ohio State, and that was the year they came very close to beating them.
Yeah.
I think Penix may have gotten injured that game. I don't remember. And then last year they were just atrocious. So, yeah, this year's not going to be good. I mean, I don't know if Connor Bazelak is going to be the savior, and even if he does improve the team in a lot of ways, he doesn't really have a lot to go with.
Yeah.
This team kind of reminds me of like a backyard football team where just like random kids show up and you just got to pick with whoever just there that day.
Yeah.
Is essentially Indiana football. They're playing with whoever just decided to show up on campus. And it's going to probably be very similar to that 2-10 team. I mean, He's going to be good. I feel like Tom Allen should have jumped ship whenever he could have.
Yeah, it might be
probably going to lose his job in the next year or so.
Yeah, you got to wonder if maybe he can, if he can swing something and maybe get a little bit lucky and stick around another year. Kind of blame the last. I wonder how long some of these guys will have to use the COVID excuse. Like of that set so many. I feel like that set so many teams back that had decent years in 2019, and then the COVID year happens, especially with the Big Ten, because they were so far behind everybody else in terms of getting the season going and didn't play as long. And I feel like that really has kind of, other than some of the teams that we're about to talk about, has really kind of, the bad teams have taken a long time to kind of get back going. And so you wonder if some of these coaches from these teams will get, like, when their leash runs out of the being able to use COVID as the COVID year, especially as an excuse.
You know what's crazy? So most of the time, there's a school who ends up, I mean, I say most of the time, usually like at least once, a team plays someone else coming off their bye week. Like, I don't know, like, for example, September 17th, Indiana plays Western Kentucky at home with Western Kentucky coming off their bye week. Normally that's like the one game that happens. Indiana has this happen to them 3 times. September 17th, like I mentioned, Western Kentucky. WKU's coming off their bye week. October 1st, Nebraska. With Nebraska coming off their bye week. And then October 22nd with Rutgers coming off of their bye week. And 2 out of those 3, those last 2, are on the road. Like, Indiana wasn't given any favors this year.
Yeah, that's also part of the reason when we get down to records and standings, where that's part of the reason why they'll be where I have them. Let's move over to another team, Patrick, that kind of, I feel like was very roller coastery last year, and that's Maryland. They finished 7-6 last year. They've got Tua's younger brother, Tulia Tagovailoa, over there. Look, I think this team last year, they looked better than they had been. They still got a little bit of a ways to go. The defense was near the bottom of the conference, so they've got to hope that gets a little bit better. They got basically what happened. Maryland is the perfect middle of the road team. They got blown out by the good teams on their schedule. They beat the teams they should have, and they really just kind of, they lost. So they lost to the teams they should have, and it is what it is. It was very much a chalk team. That's got to change for them to be better this year. I don't know if that's going to be the case. Defense, again, needs to improve a lot. They've got a tough schedule. Of course, being in the East Division, you're going to have a tough schedule. They do have maybe one of the best wide receiver cores in this entire conference, with Raheem Jarrett, Dante Demas, and Jacob Copeland. So you hope that they hit those guys and Tagovailoa can actually do something. But I think for this team to win, they're going to have to win shootouts, and that's a dangerous game to play.
I mean, I think in some ways they're poised to be able to do that. I just don't know if this defense is built in a way to be able to stop a possession or two. Because in those type of games, that's really all you need is one stop.
Right, and I think the offense is there. It's a matter of defense. Even get lucky. Like, sometimes you don't even have to be necessarily a good defense to win a shootout. You just have to get lucky. And part of that is being, like, not great, but at least in the right positions. And so that's going to be interesting to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Maryland's one of those teams where you always have one school in a conference where you wish that they can improve and you're hoping they take that next step. Maryland's one of those teams for me that I'm always just waiting and wishing they would take that next step. I think they can do it as long as they can make a few changes on this defense. Then I think they can make it happen.
Yeah. But once again, like, for me, this is just such a tough division when you've got really the next 4 teams we're going to talk about in division matchups. It's always going to be a little bit tough. So let's talk about one of those, Patrick. We got Michigan, who finally, Jim Harbaugh finally beats Ohio State last year. But he's got to retool a defense that lost a lot of key players. Of course, Aiden Hutchinson being one of the main ones that he lost. So you're looking at a team that yes, they were much better last year even than I thought they were going to be. And Harbaugh probably saved his job, but defensively they've got a. When you're filling that many big holes, it gets a little tough. I think on offense, we'll see what happens with the quarterback situation. I don't know if that has been settled yet between what's his name, the Texas Tech kid. Who am I thinking of? Kid who came from Texas Tech. Aiden McNamara. Didn't he come from Texas Tech? I think it's either him or JJ McCarthy look to be the guys to do it. I don't know if they've announced who's going to be the starter week 1. But again, what we say all the time: if you've got 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. The guy to keep an eye on here, of course, is going to be Blake Corum, who might be one of the best running backs in the conference, with Kenneth Walker being gone from Michigan State, and maybe one of the best in the country. So their offense has some pieces. Ronnie Bell comes back from injury. So you look at maybe them having a pretty good group of wide receivers. But again, for me, this is, can they take the next step? They got a lot better last year. They finally got over the Ohio State hump. But can you take that next step and go from being a good football team to a top-tier football team?
Yeah, for me, it's just a matter of the defense. I mean, they bring back their top 5 receivers. You mentioned Blake Corum's going to be able to take the next step. He had 11 touchdowns when Hassan Haskins had 20. And yardage-wise, he wasn't too far off. He almost had 1,000 yards himself. So, I think the offense is going to be fine, even with kind of lackluster quarterback play, which they've had for a long time. It's just a matter of, and you mentioned it, the quality pieces they're missing on defense and the quantity that they're going to have to replace on defense. They're losing 3 of their top tacklers. They're losing 25 sacks with just David Ojabo and Aiden Hutchinson alone. Just those 2.
Yeah.
That was probably, doing rough math, 80 to 85% of their sack production. No one else had more than 1 sack that's returning. Hutchinson 14 or Ojabo 11. Everyone else had, if they had one, 0.5 or 1. That's bad. And then, of course, you're missing Daxton Hill at safety.
Mm-hmm.
So, who do you have that's going to be able to put pressure on the quarterback? Who do you have that's going to be able to force turnovers? I understand it's Michigan. They should be able to recruit and just kind of reload, but we haven't really seen them do that time and time again. So, you're not just missing one and then the next guy step up. You're missing both your edge rushers.
Yeah.
You're too many pieces. I don't know.
Well, and to me, they've been so – it's going to anger some Michigan fans probably, but they've been so far behind Ohio State the last decade and a half, really, that, Ohio State can go out. They lose a top guy at wide receiver. They lose a Chris Olave. They can replace him. You lose a top quarterback, you can replace him. You lose a top running back, you can replace him.
Yeah.
You've probably got 2-3 guys on the roster that can do it. And Michigan just doesn't have that because again, they've been so lackluster for a big name program the last couple of years that decade and a half, that I don't think they've built up that wealth of depth. And that's a big deal, and that's a tough deal when you're a team, again, that took a big step and is sitting at the top. When you've got to replace some of your guys, that becomes a lot harder when you're not consistently at the top, if that makes sense. So I think that's a worry if you're a Michigan fan of, is the reload a fast reload, one off season, or is it a 2 season off or a 2 season reload? And where Michigan's been the last decade and a half, I don't think if they fall back a little bit this year, it's not necessarily a damning statement for the program. I think it's just hey, we're not Alabama, we're not Ohio State, we're not to a lesser degree because the conference is lesser, Oklahoma. Like, we're not those teams that are going to consistently be the favorite every single year, and sometimes that takes a second year to replace some of those guys like an Aiden Hutchinson and David Ajabo, because those guys are very, 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 very good football players. So we'll see how that goes. Speaking of another team, Patrick, that has to replace some big names, Michigan State up next. I think, look, I would say they're ahead. I would say they're way ahead of schedule with Mel Tucker. They should not have been as good as they were last year. They finished 11-2. Patrick, if you go back and listen to last year's conference preview, I had them finishing last in the conference. I think I had them winning 2 games instead of losing 2 games. And so for me, they came out of nowhere and kind of surprised. Of course, having a guy like Kenneth Walker the third,
that's going to help you a ton.
It helps a ton. But they don't have them this year. They've got to replace him. They're looking to do that with a mix of transfers. You got some guys like Amir Speed, who's coming from Georgia, on the defensive side of the football, which they have to do. They have to get better on defense, especially in the passing game. Patrick, they were 11th in the Big Ten last year against the pass. And you think about the fact that this is a team that finished 11-2. If you're 11th in the Big Ten, and the Big Ten, of course, having 14 teams, so take that for what you will. Not very good at math up there. But when you're 11th in the conference and you still finish only losing 2 games, you've got to fix a problem, because that's the problem that kept you from going to a natty, right? Like, Ohio State finishes 11-2. Of course, some of that's bowl game stuff, but you got to take that next step on defense. Can they do it this year? I don't know. Again, they're bringing in a lot of transfers, and sometimes that can help it go a lot quicker. But I think this season we're going to see how good Peyton Thorne is at quarterback, because I think losing Kenneth Walker, he's going to have a big year, and they might have to be in a little bit of an outscoring bit if their defense hasn't improved past, again, 11th in the Big Ten. So do I think they're going to fall off from what they were last year? Yes and no. I think
not by much.
I think they're still going to be a very, very good football team, but I think that I think they're not going to be undefeated as long as they were last year. I think they lose a little bit earlier, and so we don't have the whoa, is Michigan State for real? Are they going to actually, conference? Are they going to win? I think they're going to lose early enough, and I'd have to go back and look at all of our picks to see how early I had them losing. But I think they're not going to be in the conversation in the way that they were last year.
I mean, that's completely fair. They have used the transfer portal well in the past. I mean, hell. Walker was a transfer from Wake Forest, and look how that turned out. I'm not saying that it's just that easy, but they know how it's done. They've seen success with the portal. I think some of these guys are going to be successful. I think the offensive line is going to be a concern for me. Last year they brought everyone back. Now they have 2 guys coming back. They have a transfer out of Washington State that's going to help with some starting experience. But, that was a key reason as to – Kenneth Walker's great. I'm not saying that. That was why he turned out to get 1,700 rushing yards. But, that certainly helped as having all that success in the offensive line. So, losing a guy like Walker on top of having all that starting experience leave, I think that's going to hurt. I do think, like you mentioned, this team is going to take a step back. I don't think they're going to fall on their face this year. But I do think, what did they finish last year? 11-2.
Yeah.
I can see them 8-9 win season.
Well, so Patrick,
Without going and I haven't picked the games yet. That might change, but
you better get on that because we're about to have to talk about that. But Patrick, to help you out, they play Ohio State week 6, so they're going to lose early enough in the season that they'll be undefeated up until then because it's a pretty soft schedule. Potentially, you might have them losing to Minnesota or something. I picked them to beat Minnesota. But by week 6, they're going to have at least one loss. And so that puts them a little bit out of the conversation, especially with Ohio State obviously being in the East with them. That gives you not only a conference loss, but a division loss as well.
Yeah.
Speaking of Patrick, Ohio State is up next. And, man, look, I think the simple version is this isn't easy to be a playoff team, right? CJ Stroud's back. There's plenty of talent on both sides of the ball. Really, the one area of concern, and I wink, wink, nod, nod, concern. In my notes, I used concern is the defensive line. But even then, they'll reload enough that they'll be fine. Yeah. So I think they're still going to be absolutely the favorite in the conference or favorite in the division. They're going to be the favorite in the conference. And again, they're an easy pick to be a playoff team. Whether they'll win in the playoff or not, we'll see once again. For me, keep an eye on offensive lineman DeJuan Jones. He's one of the best in the country. So that's not just keep an eye on him in game. Keep an eye on him next April. He'll probably be towards the top of the list there. But simple, easy put, Ohio State, very, very good football team.
I mean, here's a name that no one's going to bring up in terms of keep an eye out on. Maybe because he's not suiting up per se, but this is the guy I'm going to say keep an eye on, especially as the year progresses. I mean, Jim Knowles.
Yeah.
He was brought in from Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma State is known for having one of the year in year out, having one of the better defenses in the Big 12.
That's such a shock from like the Brandon Whedon era where it was like 56, 58 games. And like, it's such a weird thing that we're talking about Jim Knowles at Ohio State because he had a successful stint as a defensive coordinator at Oklahoma State.
I mean, I see your point absolutely. Those were like barn burner games where like defense was never like.
Defense wasn't even secondary in that game. It was like the fourth option.
Yeah, like they weren't worried about that. I was like, let's just outscore them and be done with it. But I mean, to pluck one of the better defensive coordinators and bring him into a conference that isn't necessarily known for those high-scoring games, like you're saying that if you're going to beat Ohio State, you have to earn every single yard that comes out because, I mean, in terms of that conference, Ohio State usually has a pretty solid defense, but he's probably going to turn that into a room and a side of the ball where it's just another juggernaut, just like the offense is. So, I mean, by the time we're getting into Halloween, that defense could be really scary.
Well, you're talking about a team. We're talking about a defense that needs to improve. They allowed 22.8 points per game last year, which isn't the worst we've read, isn't the worst we've heard of. But if they can go chalk and keep that, you look at this offense, Patrick, which averaged 7.96 yards per play last year, so almost 8 yards per play last year. Obviously, again, they bring back C.J. Stroud. They've got Travion Henderson at running back. You look at Jackson Smith and Jigba at wide receiver. Like, we're talking about guys that, man, if my defense allows 22.8 points a game and I've got those guys on my offense, I'm expecting to still win by 22.8 points a game. Like, I think even if this team is marginally better on defense, this is still, again, the absolute favorite to win everything. Well, not everything Big Ten related.
Yeah.
Let me put it that way. Let's move on to Penn State, Patrick. They started hot last year, and then were awful the last 8 games of the season. Right? What they started off 5-0, and then went 2-6 over the last 8 games. So this is a team that's just got to be more consistent, right? They're 11 again. They're 11-11 over the last 2 seasons. So what's that tell you? They're very up, very down. Part of that starts with quarterback Sean Clifford, who we have seen, be one of the most evenly inconsistent quarterbacks in the conference, I guess. Maybe like you expect a good game from him, and then you expect a bad game from him. You expect a good play from him, and then you expect a bad play from him. And so he's just got to be more consistent. But the main place they've got to get better on on offense is the offensive line. Their offensive line was terrible last year. They gave up 44 sacks. Part of that's on Sean Clifford, of course, but just not a good offensive line, because they also, Patrick, failed to have a 100-yard rusher last year in a game.
Bad.
And only managed they basically managed Trent Richardson's career average per carry. And if I have to say Trent Richardson and you in the same sentence, that's not a good thing. A professional Trent Richardson. So you hope that again, this is a team that you hope plays better. The defense lost a lot, so they've got to get a little bit better. So for me, the area to watch is absolutely the offensive line, but they've just got to be consistent across the board. And we'll see how that goes.
I mean, that rushing stat was just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah.
They lose a lot on defense. They lose a lot on defense.
And it wasn't a particularly great defense. I mean, 25 points a game last year. So, no, it was the offense. Sorry. But yeah, I mean, they weren't a great defense last year. So to have to replace a bunch on a non-great defense is kind of a scary proposition.
What do you think? How hot is this seat for Franklin? Is it a year where if they have another down year, we could see him gone? Or is his seat cool enough to where he can get through the year, have another mediocre season, and then we're talking this time next year?
So you're asking an either or question, correct?
Yeah. How hot is his seat?
Yes. Look, I think it goes like this. Like, this is a very top-heavy conference. This is a very top-heavy division. Your top 3 teams are absolutely Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State. I think those 3 teams are all ahead of Penn State. And I think the way Franklin keeps his job is he has to beat one if he has the team above 500. So let's say they finish 7-6. Well, 7-6, so including a bowl game. So let's say they finish 7-6 like they did last year. If he can beat Michigan State and/or Michigan and/or Ohio State and finish 7-6, I think he keeps his job. If he loses all 3 of those games and finishes, let's say 6-6 or 7-6, I think you could see him gone. If he doesn't beat any of those teams and he finishes 5-7, he's absolutely gone. I think. Because I think Penn State's organization, Penn State's whatever athletic department is going to look at it and go, look, if we don't get this thing going now, we're going to fall farther and farther and farther behind. And I think Maryland is a team on the rise. I think potentially we could see Rutgers start getting better. And so if you get to where you've got 4 other teams in the division that are really good, you're talking about finishing, you're hoping to finish 4th, 5th in the division. And if you're a brand like Penn State, that can't happen. And I think you run the risk of, being an afterthought. And Penn State doesn't and can't stand being an afterthought. And I don't think they're quite there yet. They're winning enough games against enough teams. They, do the big wide out and everybody pays attention to them. But man, if you have another, again, I think it depends on the way the season goes. If it's like last year where they start off 5-0 and then finish 2-6, he's gone. If, they end up with a 7-6 year, where you win 4 games, then you lose a couple games, and you win 2 games, you lose another game. If it's a season like that, a back and forth kind of season, I think you can kind of weave your way off the hot seat and buy yourself another year. But if it's an all or nothing sort of year like it was last year, I think he's gone. So that answers your question?
Completely answers my question, actually.
Good. What about you? You think he's – it's sort of same situation? You're thinking the same thing?
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking the same thing. I think
he's running out of reason.
It's not one of those schools to where, boosters are going to pull the plug so quickly. I think – what started for me was the COVID year. That COVID year was just some of the worst. And Michigan was the same way. I can remember in Michigan, Penn State barn burner during the COVID year, just some of the worst football teams I'd ever seen, which they ended up getting hot at the right time. They won their last 4 games. Michigan being the kickstarter of that. Rutgers, Michigan State, and Illinois. Not the best teams, but they absolutely need to win their last 4. And then, of course, they won their first 5 last year. So, they won 9 straight going from the COVID year. But I don't think, in my opinion, I think if he can win at least 8 games, one of them being the big 3 that you mentioned, I think he can coast on by again.
Yeah.
But if he has a year where they just fall flat, I think he's gone. If he manages to coast, I think he is on the hot seat for next season. If they're as bad as they were during 2020, by all means, he's gone at the end of the year, because that was just.
To me, no matter what, he makes it through the end of the year, whether he's there. Yeah, whether he's there, in December still. That's the big question for me. I don't think they'd fire him middle of the year.
I think you mentioned that, and there were talks about him being interested in other jobs last year, and then I think, he played it well. I think he got an extension, if I remember it right. So, depending on his buyout, that may be stuck with him, but I could see him taking another job, even if it's the NFL.
Yeah.
If he has another poor year, just to kind of save face.
I could see a little bit of the Penn State big brass kind of giving him the elbow nudge on the way out and saying, "Hey, you want to take that job? Yeah, you want to take that job?
Oh, you're interested. I can set you up that interview if you want. Why don't you go take that trip? Just hear what they have to say."
Yeah, hey, we got this plane. You can.
While you're gone, maybe we'll talk about your replacement. But we didn't say that. You didn't hear me say that.
Yeah. Let's move on to Rutgers, Patrick. Last team in the East, and this is a team that showed some improvement last year. Greg Schiano, I think this is his 2nd year back, or this will be his 3rd year back, I guess. I think they got a long way to go, though, and I think they were better last year, but their schedule this year does them 0 favors. They don't have a settled quarterback. That's always an issue. The offensive line is having to rely heavily on transfers. When you're a school like Rutgers, that's maybe not the best thing. Defense has got to replace a ton of people. Granted, that defense was bad last year, so maybe that's a good thing, but that could also be a bad thing. If they're replacing guys, are they replacing them with guys who weren't good enough to start last year? That's a good question to ask. Bright spot, keep an eye on safety, Avery Young. I think he's going to be he's going to have to work a lot on the back end of this defense. But I think he's a good enough player to make a difference. But just overall, the schedule is so brutal for them that it's going to be an ugly year in New Jersey.
Boston College, Iowa, Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, Maryland. Ooh. It ain't easy.
Yeah, they got a little bit of the bad side. They play Minnesota. They got the bad side of the conference flip of playing the opposite division. It's a tough schedule for them.
Yeah. I mean, they do play Indiana, so that helps. They play Wagner. They play Temple. It's not Temple tough anymore.
But it's
Penn
also
State
not
still
Temple
tough.
terrible either. So that's a game. That's a game I think that is a little bit more of a toss up than it might have looked on paper
Yeah.
originally. And I say this, I actually have them losing that game.
Well, it doesn't help they're going to Temple either. So
Yeah.
I can see that. I can easily see that happen.
They're just not a good football team.
Well, I mean, like you mentioned, they're going in the right direction, but this year ain't gonna be it.
Yeah, I think this is a big step back for them, and it will call into question whether they should keep Shiano or not, and I'm not sure what the actual answer is to that.
Man, I mean, you got a guy who wanted to be there. I say keep him. I mean,
you got a guy who wanted to be there because that might have been the only place that would have really hired him.
yeah, exactly. But who's going to come in and do a better job? I mean, plus it's Rutgers. You got to give whoever is in there, you got to give them lots of time.
Well, and I think he gets the benefit of the doubt because the schedule is so brutal. Let's flip over to the West, Patrick, where things might be both easier and harder. Because I think this division is a lot more wide open, top to bottom, than the East is. But let's start in Illinois. With Fighting Illini, Patrick, your good old buddy Brett Bielema. They just missed a bowl game last year. I think the hope is that Arkansas native Patrick. Barry Lunny Jr. Comes in and actually makes this offense a lot better. He came from specifically Roadrunners Meet UTSA, and you're hoping that bringing in Syracuse transfer Tommy DeVito, who is probably going to be the starting quarterback over Artur Sitkowski. Again, you hope that that's good. But again, he's transferring in from Syracuse, and they were so up and down that you're not sure that that's necessarily a ton of an upgrade. They got to rebuild an offensive line. You look on the defensive side of the ball, they returned 6 guys. That's helpful. But, Patrick, I'm going to bring up something. On defense, they also bring back Calvin Hart Jr., who's a guy to keep an eye on at linebacker for me. But for me, the question is going to be, again, same question I always have with Brett Bielema. How much are you really going to improve the trenches? At Arkansas, he was supposed to be the guy that was brought in to make Arkansas ground and pound and really win in the running game. And every year, the offensive line got worse. Every year, it seemed like the defensive line got worse. And when you have a guy whose supposed strong suit is the trenches, and the trenches never get better, you wonder if, like, how are you supposed to get better if the thing you're supposed to be best? We talk about those with the Seahawks all the time, and Pete Carroll and defensive backs. If the thing you're supposed to be the best at is not what you're the best at, you're probably not going to be a very good football team. I don't think I just don't trust Brett Bielema, so I don't think that bringing in Barry Lunny and a new quarterback is necessarily going to provide the offensive boom that they're hoping it does.
Yeah, I mean, it can't hurt, in my opinion. I mean, he's got camaraderie with him. We saw what Lunny Jr. was able to do at UTSA. So I mean, it can't hurt. I remember this time last year, I mean, we were talking with Bielema. I say we as if we actually spoke to him, but we were going to Bielema say that he didn't have anyone on the offensive line that was worth anything. Like, he didn't think he actually had 5 scholarship offensive linemen that were good enough to start. So there's that. I mean, I think it's going to improve just because he's starting to get his own guys now. and it's Illinois. And that team was dog garbage. And I don't even think that team put any effort as far as recruiting anyone. And this team is starting, like you mentioned, playing the portal to their advantage. They brought one or two offensive linemen in. They had Western Michigan Chase Brown, the running back, who's coming back from last year. They've got some solid receivers coming back in. Whoever wins that quarterback battle is going to be key, though. Like, I think they've got some decent weapons. It's just a matter of who ends up winning that battle. As far as their schedule goes for this year, I mean, they start off with some decent non-conference games that they can win. Virginia's not going to be easy. I mean, they play. Gosh, this conference schedule is one of the toughest ones I've seen.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal.
Minnesota, which, I mean, Minnesota's not a great team, but at the same time, like, it's not easy. Nebraska, who should be improved coming off of their bye. Michigan State, Purdue, Michigan, and then Northwestern, that sneaky Northwestern game that we love to talk about. I mean, Northwestern, late November.
Yeah, that's tricky.
So this is just some teams who are looking to improve. Sometimes they get handed schedules that it's like, all right, we can build off of this. This is not one of those schedules. Like, this is just a juggernaut schedule. It's bad. It's tough.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. And so you throw all those things together. I think you're probably looking at a fairly similar year to last year. At the end of things, they again might be a better football team overall. But I think that the win, like it's one of those schedules that it's hard to find wins on. Like, you start picking games.
Yeah.
Well,
you're really looking at it trying to force a W that's not there.
Yeah, and this is why, again, when we give our final standings, this is part of why we go through and actually pick all of the games, because when you pick all the games, I said this last week, when you pick all the games in the order that they happen and you see how things start going, you go, ooh, well, what I thought maybe if I were just to say, I think this is a 6-6 football team, or this is a 7-6 football team. Well, by the time the schedule's played out and you look at the order of it and what happened, what you think is going to happen in which game, like sometimes those 7-6 teams end up being 4-8. Sometimes those 8-4 teams end up being 5-7, and it's just the nature of how football and how schedules work that sometimes happen. And I think that's kind of what's going to happen with this team. They might be closer to a 6-6 team, but they're probably going to end up with a schedule closer to a 4 or a standing closer to a 4-8.
Yeah.
Now, Patrick, let's move on to Iowa. Last year's division title, or they won the division title last year, finished 10-4 overall. I will say this. I think that this team will go as far as their offense can take them, because this defense is going to be good like they always are. This is usually one of the most solid defenses in the league. I've got cornerback Riley Moss among a lot of other good football players. And so defense is not an area to worry about. Offense, again, is always the big question mark for them. Keep an eye on the quarterback battle between Petrus and Alex Padilla. That's going to be if one of them can take the reins and take the offense to the next level, this could be a scary good football team. It's going to be a tough team to beat either way.
Yeah. I mean, they've got a lot of weapons coming back. I mean, Tyler Goodson is gone, but you've got plenty of guys who had experience coming back to this team that if you can make up with that. And I was always built to have a good rushing attack no matter who's toting the rock there. 3 of their top receivers are coming back, including Sam Laporta. I think that's going to be huge for whoever wins that quarterback battle. Offensive line, this is always one of the best offensive line groups in the country. I mean, you've got big, beefy Iowa boys playing on the offensive line. They do lose one of the best centers in college football in Tyler Lindenbaum, but again, they literally breed these guys in a lab. So I'm not worried about them losing one offensive lineman. They're just going to filter in the next big boy, and they'll be perfectly fine. The key one is going to be the defense, in my opinion, on top of the quarterback battle, because I don't know. Like, Iowa in the past has had not necessarily just great quarterbacks, but Iowa great quarterbacks, if that makes any sense.
It does to me.
I don't know if the guys they have in this room are going to do it. Like Spencer Petras doesn't excite me. I don't know if Alex Padilla is much better. So, to me, this quarterback room is going to actually win or lose games for them.
Yeah, Ricky Stanzi's not walking through that door, Patrick.
I wish he was.
I had to get one in. I was like, which one's the Iowa quarterback to bring up? Yeah. This again, I think the key with this is going to be this team will go as far as their offense can take them. So you just got to hope that if you're an Iowa fan that works out. And the schedule actually works out pretty even keel, and not necessarily in their favor. They get Michigan, Wisconsin, and Nebraska in Iowa. They have to go on the road to play Ohio State, which you assume is a loss anyways. They go on the road to play Purdue and Minnesota, depending on how those teams turn out. Those could be tough games as well. So, you get a couple tough ones that you get at home, and you get a couple tough ones on the road. So, all ends up square. Let's move on, Patrick, to one of those teams, and that is Minnesota. Minnesota, finished 9-4, which was kind of a dip from what we thought they might have been last year. They bring back Tanner Morgan. Mohamed Ibrahim is back at running back.
I really hope that he can come back from that injury, because he was one of the running backs coming in the last year that I was so excited to watch. And then first game, he has that injury.
Yeah.
Year. Gosh, that was a big blow. But I really hope that he could come back and have his explosiveness that he's so accustomed to having.
Yeah, coming from a torn Achilles is tough. That's why he's my big player to watch, because I think if he comes back and he is as good as he was last time we saw him, I think that that's a big thing to see. They bring back their offensive coordinator from a couple years ago. In 2019, we saw Tanner Morgan throw for over 3,000 yards, 30 touchdowns with this OC. And so I think that's going to be huge to keep an eye on. They bring back several good wide receivers. They've got center John Michael Schmitz, who's one of the best offensive linemen in the country. He's the only returning starter on that offensive line. But, having a good anchor like that is a good place to start. They got to kind of rebuild both sides of the trenches, which is tough. But other than that, the defense should be okay. I think this team is going to be a tough out. Are they going to be a really, really good football team? It's hard to say because it all depends on – it kind of all hinges on how Tanner Morgan and crew play on the offensive side of the ball. I think they'll be tough. They're going to lose – the games they lose will be close losses. They're also going to win some sketchy ones. They might be a little bit of a heartbreak kid team.
Yeah, I mean – I think they could be like COVID Indiana in a sense that they can scare some of these bigger teams. They can. I mean, there was their schedule to play out. New Mexico State, Western Illinois, Colorado. I mean, I think their schedule is kind of favorable.
It's very favorable.
October. They have to go to Michigan State, Illinois, Penn State, Nebraska, and then to end the year at Wisconsin. Those aren't really tough. I can see that Michigan State game being tough. Penn State, I don't know, kind of iffy on that one. But this is a pretty favorable schedule, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm trying to see real quick what that Michigan State game, what week that is. Is that week 7?
No, they play them the last weekend of September.
Okay,
That's
so
probably week 4 or 5.
week 4 or 5. I was trying to see what Michigan State's coming off of, whether that's a win or not. Yeah, I think. Oh yeah, see, yeah, I've got Minnesota losing that one because I think that's still when Michigan State is good. I think if they catch them later in the season, that might be a game that they could have snuck in and won. But I think by the time I think they play Penn State, I think Penn State's lost enough games that maybe they're in a downswing and you can catch them sleeping. And so I think Minnesota has a fairly favorable layout of their schedule to be a pretty good football team here.
Yeah, I mean, it's one. We were just talking about it. They're kind of a team that they've got the building blocks in place, and then they get the schedule, and it's pretty nice schedule for them. It's like, all right, we can build off this. I can see where we can get on a run, have some momentum, and by the time we play one of these juggernauts, we can actually dig our heels in and make this an even game.
Yeah.
So if I'm Minnesota fan base, if I am PJ Fleck, I'm jazzed up about the schedule.
Yeah, I think you've got a real chance. Let's move on, Patrick, to a team that maybe isn't as jazzed about the last couple seasons. But, Patrick, I'll say this. We finally don't have to watch Adrian Martinez play quarterback for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. UT transfer Casey Thompson comes in. He had 24 touchdowns last year. So this is absolutely a team that needs to improve on offense. They've got to play better up front. They've got to have fewer turnovers than they did last year, which they had 18 turnovers that they actually lost from the offense. But I'm going to say I think that is automatically improved if Casey Thompson is your quarterback over Adrian Martinez. But Patrick, I excuse the pun, but I'm a dad, so I can actually say that I can do this now.
Yeah, you can make dad jokes.
Scott Frost might be melting from how hot his seat is. Like, this is the guy.
He's got the hottest seat in the country.
Yeah, and I think, the defense has been okay the last couple years. They've got a lot of guys returning. They've got some transfers. They should be fine. You look at their linebacking core with Garrett Nelson and Luke Reimer. They should be fine on defense. It's all going to come down to how this offense looks with Casey Thompson at quarterback. Was it Scott? Is it Scott Whipple? What's his first? Mark Whipple. Scott Frost, Mark Whipple, coming in as a new offensive coordinator. Looking to change the question for me is, I think similar to Franklin for Penn State, how good does this season have to look for Nebraska to keep him? They went 3-9 last year. I don't think you're going to see a massive jump. I forget exactly how their schedule lines out, but I don't think you're going to see a massive jump from like 3 wins to 8 wins. So is 6 wins enough? Is a 6-6 season and maybe sneaking into a bowl game and winning it, is that enough for Scott Frost to keep his job, or is it kind of you've got to flip your standing and be 9-3 to keep it?
And so they've given him plenty of time, in my opinion. It feels like a decade since he had that great year at Central Florida. It feels like that was so long ago.
Well, to be fair, it feels like 2 decades since Adrian Martinez was the starting quarterback, or wasn't the starting quarterback.
So, yeah, exactly.
Will.
It absolutely does. But we mentioned like some guys just kind of get the short end of the stick because they didn't have enough time, or COVID maybe played a big role, or injuries. But I'm like, this dude ran out of excuses 2 years ago. In my opinion. Like, he has to get it right. Like, I think so. Week 1, Northwestern in Dublin. I think you have to win that game. I think you need to go 3-0. I think if he were to somehow beat Oklahoma, go 4-0, he keeps his job no matter what. But that's going to be a loss at home. So you play Indiana, Rutgers, and then Purdue. I mean, I think you can win one out of those, maybe two, but I don't know. I don't think you're beating Purdue, so you're going to have to beat Rutgers in Rutgers on a Friday. I'm not saying it's not doable.
Risky.
It's risky. Have your bye week, and then the rest of the year is Illinois, Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, and at Iowa. I mean, those are 1, 2, 3, 4 losses in a row. I mean, potentially 5. We don't know about this Illinois team, so I mean, I can see 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, I can easily say easily is not the best word to say. I can see 5 wins, but is a 5-7 team good enough? Like,
Well,
all I'm seeing 4-8, 4-8, 5-7, 3-5, 3-9. I mean, like, if you have a 5-7,
guys, he really been there that long?
which I'm just looking at from the past 5 years.
Oh, okay.
Since 2017, I'm not even looking farther than that. But, like,
I think he came in 2019 was his first year.
19? Are you sure? What? I've got to know.
Wow. Well, I think while you're looking that up, Patrick, I think this is maybe the soft answer, but I think it's very similar to Franklin, like at Penn State. It depends. For me, I think him keeping his job totally depends on who his wins are against. If, like you said, if he could sneak a win again.
2018.
18, okay. So he was there for the 2018 season.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which, I mean, so you can scrap 2017 off of my bad seasons I mentioned. 18, 4-8.
Yeah.
So 4-8, 5-7, 3-5, 3-9.
Yeah.
So you have another bad year, and that's 5 years of mediocre football. I mean, you couldn't turn it around in 5 years.
I think if he doesn't go at least 6-6, he's gone. I think if he goes,
a bowl game could save him, because at least getting to a bowl, like, that is the physical sense, in a way, the tangible sense of progress. Like, you're finally playing a game in December.
Yeah, I think a 6-6 season, if you get a win against a team that you shouldn't get a win against, pull an upset on a team that you that looks good on paper to be, like, again, if you beat an OU, I don't think they're going to, but if you beat OU, that looks really good on paper, even in a 6-6 season. If your OU's one loss before bowl season, that looks really good on a resume. If you're trying to keep your job, do I think that's going to happen? No, but I can see him doing just enough with this team to buy one more year, and then I think he's got to go 6-6 this year, get into a bowl game, probably win that bowl game, depending on who it's against. And then turn next year has to be an 8 to 9 win season. And if it's not, then he's gone. But if it's another below 500 year, or if it's a 6-6 year and he loses all the big games and doesn't pull any upsets, I think they might send him packing, because Nebraska's another one of those schools that I feel like thinks they're better historically than they probably really are. Like, they've had some good teams over the years here and there, but largely they've been mediocre for a lot of it. And they probably have no business being as excited about how good they are, or how good they should be. In a lot of ways, Patrick, this is going to maybe make you and some of our listeners upset, because I know we have a lot of people who live in our home state. In a lot of ways, I think Nebraska fans are very similar to Arkansas Razorback fans in that they have those glory years that they look back to and think that is how the program should be 100% of the time. And based off their location, based off where they fall within the geographic region of the United States, based off where they fall within conferences based off where they fall. Take your pick. Where with recruits in terms of, do people really want to go live in Lincoln, Nebraska for 5 years to play football? Well, if they're winning 10 to 12 games a season, sure. But if they're winning 5 to 6 games a season, that's a much tougher place to go live for a couple years. Granted, you and I both love Fayetteville. I'm not saying that. But if you're trying to sell some kid from Florida who's a 4.5 star to come to Fayetteville when he didn't grow up in Arkansas and the Hogs are 2-9 or 2-10 or whatever, that's a much harder sell than it would be at a lot of other schools. So I think this is the big question mark for me is what games can you win? You've got to win games against names that sound really good to tell a recruit. And if that's not going to be the case, if that doesn't happen, I think you have to look somewhere else at head coach, because as you pointed out with numbers, with stats, with facts, like Scott Frost ain't getting it done, and you got to move on at some point.
Yeah. Just pull off the Band-Aid, man.
Yeah. Let's move on then, Patrick, to a team that we like to talk about often in November, but not because they're challenging for a playoff spot, more because they get a little frisky and beat a team that they shouldn't beat, and that's Northwestern. Boy, what is maybe the one bright spot? Left tackle. Peter Skoronski is one of the best left tackles in the game, in the conference. Very, very good. Outside of that, Patrick, there's not a lot on this team. There's not a real front runner quarterback. They've got several guys. None of them make me very excited to watch them play. Defense was awful against the run last year, and not great against the pass either. They might be the area of the football team that improves faster than the offense, but I don't see a whole lot of opportunity for improvement. The schedule doesn't play great for them necessarily either. You're hoping you sneak a win or two maybe late in November. We always talk about the Northwestern game in November, but this is just not a great football team. I didn't trust you last year, Patrick. I had them winning some games. This is a bad football team this year.
Yeah, this is definitely a bad game. We're starting to mention one offensive lineman for them a year. That is, like, keep an eye out. It could be a first-round pick. Like, they're starting to produce offensive linemen. I think the run game is going to be one to keep an eye on. Evan Hull is a guy who, in last season, rushed for 1,000 yards. This is going to be even a more productive unit with him coming back. And on top of that, Cam Porter is going to be back. He was out for the year last year due to injury. So they could have a 1-2 punch there at running back. The thing is, they never have a quarterback.
No.
And last year, they had 3 guys running out there. Hunter Johnson, who left from Clemson, was a 5-star guy who went back to Clemson because I think he got tired of getting beat up all the time. So I think he's going to go back to Clemson and be like their 5th-string guy and just kind of chill out. Ryan Holinsky was there. I mean, he's got a great story, but at the same time, I just don't think he's a college quarterback. So what do you have there? Andrew Marty couldn't get it done either. So if you got 5 quarterbacks, which Northwestern does, that means you definitely don't have one.
It's not looking good over there for them at all. Again, this year, you hope you sneak a random win here and there, maybe, but
you play Duke, you play Southern Illinois, so I don't even know if you can beat Duke, but
let's. As bad as Northwestern is, they've got a fighting chance against Duke.
I'm not saying they don't, but that's not necessarily just a gimme there. It's not guaranteed.
No.
Here's another question.
Okay.
We mentioned guys on the hot seat. Is Fitzgerald ever going to be on the hot seat?
Man,
it's Northwestern football. He's kind of like guaranteed a job because I mean, I just look at the last 5 years as far as records. This is Northwestern. 2017 they went 10-3. 18 they went 9-5. 19 3-9. Ooh, not so good. COVID year they went 7-2. And then last year they went 3-9, and we're probably looking at it. If you went 3-9 this year, you beat a team or two that you weren't supposed to. So I mean, what does Fitzgerald have? Is his seat turned up a few degrees? Does he kind of have like you've got the reins no matter what? Like,
I don't know. They've been so up and down the last couple of years. And look,
yeah.
I think the thing going for Fitzgerald is that Northwestern is kind of one of those schools where they use the excuse of academic requirements. That Northwestern's considered such a smart person school to use the dumb person's explanation of it. They kind of, I feel like you use that as an excuse for when they're not good, and that's fine. That's okay. I think there's not enough of a push from the alumni to really, push them in a way that's like, hey, we need to actually be better. I think the alumni seem like they're okay with just like, hey, we can be good every couple of years. You win a division title. You've won a division title in 18 and 20.
They're okay with that yo-yo.
Yeah, they're okay with the yo-yo, and I think it's a little bit, not to use too many Seahawks references, but it's a little bit of the like Pete Carroll. Like, people seem to like Fitzgerald enough that they're willing to put up with it. He knows the school. He knows the restrictions of what he's looking for in terms of players, what he can get there as players. And I think there's just not a lot of urgency to get away from that. I think they kind of look at it as, consistency overall. And I get it. Like, if you're at Northwestern and you're replacing your coach every 3 years, like, you're going to be Indiana. You're going to be a bottom feeder 98% of the time. You're going to be Rutgers. You're going to be Illinois to some degree when Juice Williams isn't there. You remember Juice Williams?
Do I remember Juice Williams? What kind of man do you take me for?
I had to bring up Juice. You're looking at a team like that maybe has one good year every 10 years instead of 3 or 4 good years in a 10-year run. And I think Northwestern's okay with that. So is his seat hot? I think, if he goes 3-9, sneaks a game against somebody that maybe they have no business winning, again, I think that's plenty to keep him around for another year. And he can go, hey, I just didn't have a quarterback. I lost my defensive coordinator last year. All these sorts of things I think you can kind of use as an excuse and keep your job there. So I don't know. I don't see Fitzgerald. They're not going to be quick to pull the trigger on that one. Let's move. Let's go to Purdue, who, man, look, with Aiden O'Connell, I think is one of the best quarterbacks in the conference. Obviously, you got C.J. Stroud, who is likely the best quarterback. Tanner Morgan has an argument there. But I think outside of those two, like, it's a 3-quarterback race for best quarterback in the conference. Aiden O'Connell is definitely in that conversation. Boilermakers got to get better at running the football. We're talking Trent Richardson numbers again, 2.8 yards per carry. It's a little bit less of a big deal with them because Coach Braum wants to run the offense he wants to run. And so, take that for what you will. It's not good, but it's also not as bad for them as it is for maybe some different teams. They lost several big names on defense, and they also lost the defensive coordinator of that defense that only allowed 22.4 points a game. So that is a big question mark for them. Can they get that back under? Can they get back to being good there? They went 9-4 last year. which is the best season under Coach Brom, the best year since 2003, which I believe was the last year. Was that the last year that Drew Brees? No, Drew Brees was he 21 or 2001? Was that the year he graduated? I'll have to go back and look maybe, but we're talking.
2000.
He was 2000.
2000. He was there from 97 to 2000.
Okay, so wow, that's weird to think about. But we're talking was that the Curtis Painter year?
Curtis Painter was 05 to 08.
Okay, who was the quarterback in 03, Patrick? I know you're on College Football Reference. Do me a solid on that one.
He was quarterback in 2003. Kyle Orton.
Oh, man. I hate myself for not remembering that. Kyle Orton. Wow. Shout out Mark Ryder for your years of having to deal with Kyle Orton in Denver. And then also when he was a Bear. So that was a lot of fun. But I think, man, I think this team is a good football team. I think their record might end up being better than they were. I think their record might end up being better than what we would think it should be. Like if you just looked at, okay, well, what's Purdue going to go? You think, oh, okay, well, they were 9-4 last year. They're probably similar. They're a 9-4 football team. But Patrick, they have the most favorable schedule of the good football teams because they don't have to play Ohio State. They don't play Michigan State. They don't play Michigan, and they get Penn State at home in the season opener. And I think
Thursday.
And I think that is a very, very, very winnable game for Purdue, who for sure has an answer at quarterback, whereas Penn State, like we talked about, has a little bit of an iffy spot there. They've got some decent guys you hope that they figure out their offense, their wide receivers. You figure they will. Coach Jeff Brom is very good at offense. That's not as much of a big deal. Again, defense was pretty good. They obviously lost to Marcus Mitchell and George Karlaftis, and Marvin Grant and linebacker Jalen Alexander are also gone. So you got to replace some pieces. But I think this team, again, very favorable schedule. You got a very good quarterback. This is a team that can win a lot of football games.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the guys that they are going to have to replace, and I don't know if they're going to have a David Bell or Rondale Moore on this team. So I think that's going to hurt Aiden O'Connell quite a bit. But I'm not saying that he's reliant on those type of guys by any means, but I'm not saying that it doesn't hurt either. So I think with the loss of like a clear number one guy and a clear take the top off the ball type of guy, and on top of that, not having any type of run game at all, I don't know. I'm a little bit less opportunistic on this team than you. I'm not saying they're going to be a bad team by any means, especially with the schedule that they have. But, I mean, I'm seeing some games on here that, I'm not sold on them. I don't think that they can't beat Penn State week 1, but I think we're going to be in for a treat just as far as how good this game could be. I don't know if that's necessarily a win. Going to Minnesota and to Maryland back-to-back games, I think Nebraska could be tough for them. That 4-game stretch, Minnesota, Maryland, Nebraska, and Wisconsin, I think that's going to be really tough for them. I could see them even losing that Nebraska game, coming off of back-to-back, what I think is back-to-back losses, and then having to go to Wisconsin after that. I think that's a really October's. It's spooky season for a reason. It's going to be spooky for them.
It could be. I think the wide receiver core is going to be the main thing to keep an eye on, because if they've got some guys that turn out to be really good there, they can get scary very, very quickly. Well, Patrick, let's get our last team in, and that is Wisconsin. You just mentioned them. To obviously talk about schedule. I think, man, this is a team that year in, year out, like they're kind of that, like, you don't want them to be the favorite to win the conference, not because, but they don't look like they're a good football team necessarily, and then they end up being just good enough, and they win weird games, and like tiebreakers end up working out in their favor every single year, and they end up in the title game or something. The problem for them, they've got a very, very tough schedule. They play Ohio State, they play Michigan from the other side, from the other division. We've got a road trip to Iowa that could be tough. Defense lost some guys, so they've got to reload. You figure they're probably going to be okay there. But for me, this team is going to 100% depend on what we get out of Graham Mertz. This offense is the big question mark. That being led by Graham Mertz is maybe the biggest of the big question marks.
I mean,
their ceiling is Graham Mertz's ceiling, and I don't know. Similar to Iowa, like they're in the same boat as Iowa. I don't know if I trust Graham Mertz enough to take this offense to a level that they can really do it. I mean, yes, they've got Braylon Allen to run the football too, or to run the football, but I don't know. Graham Mertz averaged 6.8 yards per attempt last year, tossed 8 touchdowns, 6 interceptions in conference play last year. That's not good. They lost several receivers. Obviously, they lost Jake Ferguson at tight end. So, like, you're retooling. You're essentially sending Graham Mertz out there with a water gun, and he's a terrible shot anyways. And you're asking him. It's like asking Graham Mertz to make a shot from the movie Shooter with a water gun. And man, I don't think this offense is good enough to take them super, super far.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to have a bad year, but I think for Wisconsin standards, they're going to have a bad year. And I can talk about that later when we go into our scheduling. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a believer in Mertz at all, honestly. He's losing his top 3 receiver options. Only one guy who's returning had double-digit catches, which it's not like the 3 guys that they lost were 1,000-yard rushers, 75 catches. I mean, on top of that, 2 guys that are returning had touchdowns last year. So 2 guys with only 1 touchdown. Losing a lot of guys on defense. Yeah, I think they could struggle a little bit, in my opinion. You mentioned the schedule being pretty tough for them. They have to go to Ohio State early. They go to Michigan State. They go to Iowa. They get Purdue and Minnesota at home. I mean, it's not easy for them. I honestly think with one injury, they're they could be like a 7-5, 6-6 team with one injury.
Yeah, and I think for me the thing with them and the thing with all the teams in the West is that the West is so. I feel like the West is so wide open. Some of these teams are so iffy, for lack of better terms. That like I feel like we talk through these and it's like, well, Minnesota can be a really good team if this happens. Iowa can be a really good team if this happens. Nebraska can be decent if this happens. And you start looking at these really, I'm going to say top 5 teams, and I think that's Purdue, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Nebraska. And any one of them, I think, could get hot enough with what's on their roster to maybe win the division. But then all of them could also end up in that 6-6, 7-6, 8-4 sort of range, or worse if you're Nebraska. I think Nebraska is the bottom level of that. and so like again, I think the West is so wide open. It comes down to injuries, obviously, but then where the schedule lines out for a lot of these teams. So with that being said, Patrick, let's go back over to East real quick. We're going to start at the bottom, and I want you to tell me we'll go over our actual standings, and then obviously we'll have the championship game and we'll pick a champion. So Patrick, start with your bottom team. Tell me who your bottom team is in the East.
I assume we're going to have the same team because in the East I've got Indiana.
Yes. Have you finished? Have you done?
Yes, I'm done.
So tell me your record as well.
1-11.
Ooh, I'm now curious at which game you gave them, Patrick, or which game you didn't give them that I gave them, because I don't remember without having to go through all of them. I couldn't tell you what it is off the top of my head. No, not 11-1, 1-11.
I think if I remember right, I can click on. Yeah, so I'll tell you the game I had them winning. I had them beating Idaho at home.
Okay. Let's see it. Is there a way on Playoff Predictor to actually click on?
If you click on the team, it'll pull up just their schedule and all your picks. So just click on Iowa or Indiana, and then it'll pull up everything.
Let's see who I had. Indiana beating Idaho, and I had Indiana also. Oh no, I also had them going 1-11.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. I'm like, what game do you have them winning?
They were. I was confused. I was thinking I had them going 2-10, but that's what they went last year. So I had them also going 1-11, losing to Idaho. All right, Patrick, 6th spot. Who you got?
I have Rutgers at 3-9.
Okay, I had Rutgers, Patrick, also in the 6th spot. I had them at 3. No, what I had them at 2-10.
Okay.
I'm curious on Rutgers. What your?
Well, I just pulled it up. I have them beating Wagner.
Of course.
I have them beating Temple.
I have them losing to Temple. That's our one, I'm sure.
And if it'll let me scroll down, I have them beating Indiana, so there's a conference win.
Yeah, I have Rutgers.
It's that Temple game that is the difference for us.
Yeah, because I've got them at 2-10. All right, Patrick, who's your 5?
5. It's a big jump. I've got Penn State at number 5, and I have them going 8-4.
Ooh, okay, 8-4, Penn State. Yeah, see, you got them a little bit better than me. Patrick, at the 5 spot, have Maryland, who I have going 5-7. I think just the way their schedule worked out for me, I had some trouble finding wins on their schedule. Again, I think they're going to play in a lot of shootouts.
I may be a little bit more opportunistic.
Yeah, I think you might be. All right, speaking of Patrick, in the 4 spot for me, I have Penn State, who I have finishing 6-6, which I think is depending on if that again, like we talked about earlier, whether Franklin keeps his job or not, unsure. But I have them at the 4 spot.
Well, with my prediction, I think he's fine there, keeping his job. Number 4, I have Maryland. You have them 5-7. I have them 7-5.
Okay, and look, that to me is one of those that I think they're a team that I could see going either way. If they get hot and their defense plays okay, I have no problem with 7-5. Again, I'd have to go back and look at what all the losses were to see what kind of toss-up games they had. But we'll move on because I think we've covered them pretty well. Who's your 3 spot?
3 spot is Michigan State. I have them going 9-3.
9-3. They are also my 3 spot. I have them at 10-2. So I'm now curious.
I'm sure with the losses, I'm assuming Ohio State.
Yep.
With a loss. I have them losing to Minnesota.
Okay.
And to Penn State at the end of the year.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So that's why I have them at 9-3.
I have them losing to Ohio State and Michigan.
I actually have them beating Michigan this year.
I could see that happening. But Patrick, speaking of, Michigan is my number 2. I have them at 10-2. So just a little bit better.
Yeah, I actually have Michigan, my number 2 team, also at 10-2. losing to Ohio State and Michigan State.
Oh, now you have me curious who I have them losing to. This is a whole new level to this. I have them losing to Iowa because it's Iowa in Iowa.
Yeah,
That's
I get that. I have them beating Iowa, but that could be a really tough one. So.
Yeah, that to me was a toss-up game. They're coming off Maryland. Michigan's had a pretty easy schedule up to that point. Maryland takes it up a notch, but then you've got Iowa. This is a perfect trap game because you got Iowa, and then the next week you got Indiana, and then Penn State. So in the sense of it's kind of a reverse trap game of this is your big game at the start of this. Their schedule's it seems so easy. You've got Colorado State, Hawaii, UConn, Maryland, then Iowa. So you 4 home games, and then you play your first game on the road. And your first game on the road is Iowa.
Man, you're talking me out of that one.
It's again, this is the importance of.
Are my picks locked? Are my picks locked right now?
If you want to change it, I would let you.
Okay, I'm changing it, so that shakes things up a bit.
Okay, now tell me where you're at.
Well, now Michigan is 3 at 9-3, and then Michigan State is 2 at 9-3.
Okay, I like that.
So Michigan State. I'm still keeping my pick with them beating Michigan.
Yeah,
I'm not changing that one. So that loss that catapults Michigan State up to number 2.
Huge. I like that.
And
all right,
Michigan's 3.
Obviously, we both have Ohio State at the top. Patrick, I've got them going 12-0. Of course, we're not counting championship and bowl game into this.
Yeah,
because that gets too complicated when you don't know who's playing what. So I've got them going 12-0. I'm assuming you do too.
I do.
Okay, so that is the East. Let's flip over now to the West, and I have a feeling that this is going to be a very interesting difference for us because, again, I think this one's wide open. My bottom spot, Patrick, I've got Northwestern once again going 3-9.
I have got Northwestern going 2-10, so I'm interested in.
Let's see where I gave them the win. Is that what you're?
Yeah, because I have them. You're probably the Duke game because I have them beating Southern Illinois and I have them beating Illinois at the end of the year. So probably that Duke game.
That would be my guess. I have. Yeah, well, so I have Northwestern having 3 wins. I have them being 3-1 going into the Penn State game, Patrick. I have them beating Duke, Southern Illinois, and Miami of Ohio.
Wow.
Just because it's a home game, that was my. I could absolutely see them beating Iowa or Illinois that late in the year. I just took a feeling and said I think they win that game. Start off hot and then lose every game after that. But you're almost making me rethink that. Oh, do I rethink that? I'm rethinking that. I've got Miami. Okay, so I'm going to put Northwestern moves nowhere. They go to 2-10.
Completely fair.
You did it, so I'm doing it.
You have the ability to do.
Yeah. All right. Next up, Patrick, in the 6th spot, who do you have?
I have Illinois going 4-8.
Ooh, guess what?
You probably have the same.
We're chalk there. I've got them going 4-8.
Completely fair.
All right. Next up, Patrick, 5 spot. Who you got?
I've got Nebraska 5-7. Scott Frost finally gets the boot.
You've got them in 5th at 5-7. I've got them in 5th at 6-6. So now we've got to go look because I'm curious.
Will he keep his job at 6-6?
I don't think so, Patrick, because I have him because the way the schedule works out, I have them winning 6 games, but they're beating Northwestern, they're beating North Dakota, they beat Georgia Southern. Then they start off looking good. I have them losing to Oklahoma.
Sure.
I have them beating Indiana.
So far, we're chalk here.
I have them beating Rutgers.
I do too.
Then I have them losing to Purdue.
Yes.
Beating Illinois.
That's where the difference is. I have them losing to Illinois.
Brett Bielema always has a sneaky win in him, and so that one's an iffy one for me. Let's see what by then. To me, it was kind of a toss up. So what? I had him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess
basically Rutgers is their last win for me. They're going on a huge losing streak after that.
Yeah, I mean, I have them beating Rutgers, then losing Purdue. They get the comeback against Illinois, and then they lose. They end the season 0-4, and I think that's potentially what gets him fired because you look at the back half of that schedule, and that's the big names. You got Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Iowa, and if you don't beat one of those teams, I think he's gone. So we finish at 6-6. All right, next up, Patrick, 4.
4, I've got Purdue. I have them going 8-4.
Okay, you got Purdue at, you said 8-4?
Yes.
Okay. Patrick, in my 4 spot, I have Wisconsin at 8-4.
Ooh.
So I think these top 4 teams are kind of all interchangeable depending on a lot of different factors. So that's where we end up there. All right, Patrick, number 3, who you got?
Number 3, I have Wisconsin finishing 9-3.
Okay, a 9-3 Wisconsin. So we're not too far off there with what we think that team is. Just where they finish is a little bit different. I have Minnesota at 3, and I have them finishing 9-3.
I have at number 2, I have Minnesota finishing 10-2.
Okay, 10-2. I wonder what our difference was there. Let me go look real quick. I'm curious on Minnesota.
So I've got them all.
You had them beating Michigan State, didn't you?
I did, yes. That's exactly what I have them beating Michigan State.
I have them beating Michigan State, then losing to Michigan State, and Iowa and Wisconsin.
That makes complete sense.
All right, Patrick. So that means you got Iowa at number 1, huh?
I've got Iowa at number 1, 10-2.
10-2. Did I say I have Iowa at 2? Did I say that? I also have them finishing 2-2 or 10-2.
So you've got both. You've got Iowa also finishing 10-2. Okay.
I have Iowa also finishing 10-2. But Patrick, at number 1, I have Purdue, and Patrick,
You have Purdue.
I have them at 11-1.
Ooh, that's saucy.
Because I know you picked them to lose to Penn State in the opener, right?
I did. I 100% did.
So I've got Purdue winning that. I've got Purdue beating Indiana State, no question. Purdue beats Syracuse. Purdue beats Florida Atlantic. No surprise there. Then they've got, in week 5, they've got an away matchup against Minnesota. I think that's their one loss. So they've got a division loss. They've got a conference loss. It comes at Minnesota on the road. But then, man, you look at their schedule. You got Purdue, or you got Maryland. It's a road game for them, but Maryland is I think that turns into a shootout, and I like Purdue's odds there. Then you got a Nebraska team that's starting to reel by week 7. You get Wisconsin. Who knows what they're going to be? Again, like we talked about. Then they get Iowa at home. They get Illinois on the road, so that's a very winnable game. They got Purdue, or they got Northwestern on the road, and they've got Indiana at home. Or they play Purdue. I keep getting it mixed up. They've got Northwestern at home, and then they've got Indiana on the road. So you look at the back end of their schedule. The last 3 games of the season, you got Illinois, Northwestern, Indiana. You should go 3-0 there. Iowa's the tough one, but you get a bye week in between Wisconsin and Iowa. So you get, not only do you get Iowa at home, you're coming off a bye week. And so just the way their schedule works out, man, I really like what this team could do. So I think for me, I've got Purdue winning the West. So you've got Iowa, I've got Purdue. You go to the Big Ten championship game. Mine's Purdue versus Ohio State. Yours is Iowa against Ohio State. Patrick, are we going to be different here?
No, I'm sure Ohio State's going to take it for both of us.
Yeah, I've got Ohio State winning the Big Ten championship game, even though it's it's technically more of a home game for Purdue, but there will still be more Ohio State fans in the stadium. Are they still? Because I'm assuming they still do that at Lucas Oil, right?
I would safely assume so.
Yeah. So I think, look, when all of this is said and done, it doesn't really matter what else happens in the conference, because I think Ohio State there is a very clear tier one, and it is Ohio State. Everything else after that, I think Michigan, Michigan State are tier two, and then tier three.
Would you include Wisconsin in tier two?
I don't think so.
Would you include Iowa in tier two?
No, I think it's just Michigan, Michigan State.
Then I'm assuming Wisconsin and Iowa lead tier three.
Purdue, Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, and I would even almost throw Penn State and Maryland and Nebraska into tier three. I think tier three is pretty wide open, because I think there's a lot of teams that are very similar in that they're not great football teams.
Yeah, I would do it Ohio State definitely in their own tier. I would do probably Michigan State, but I would include Wisconsin and Iowa in tier three. And then I would include, actually, I swap out, and in tier two and in tier three is Michigan State, Minnesota, Purdue. And then tier four is just everyone else, because everyone else is bad. That you're talking like, and I think I actually probably put Maryland in their own tier, and then 6 would be Indiana, Rutgers, Northwestern, Nebraska, and Illinois.
I think
their own bottom feeder tier.
I think for me, Nebraska and Maryland, who I both have finishing 5th in their division, are in the question mark tier. I could see them as high as the 3rd tier. I could see them towards the bottom. Again, a long way to say, I think all these teams outside of Ohio State really are very questionable at best. But that's going to do it. We both picked Ohio State. Next week, Patrick, we get to talk about our hometown teams. We get to talk about the teams we know the best, probably, because we get to talk about the SEC. And, of course, that means the Power 5 or the G5 conference will be the Sun Belt, where you and I are both an alumnus of. I guess, is that the we both went to a Sun Belt school. I could say that. We both got a degree from a Sun Belt school. So we'll see what happens there. What you can do in the meantime, obviously, if you're watching, if you're watching the live stream, or if you're watching it after the fact, you can see this, that we have everything scrolling down at the bottom. So all the socials. But if you're not, obviously Twitter at MIATC show. Me and Patrick both have Twitters at Matt_Sindler, at Patrick_Howie. Real simple. Facebook is Mattyice and the Chief. Instagram is the same as Twitter, so it's MIATC show. And if you follow us on YouTube, where the video will be tomorrow after this recording and when I get it up, is Mattyice and the Chief as well. So very simple. We're the only ones on SoundCloud, on iTunes. If you look for that, you'll find it. Do that, like, rate, review, subscribe, all those good things. But if you're following that, you'll see when this happens, because we're both adults with jobs and one of us has a kid. Like, we don't necessarily have a set day of when we can record. Sometimes Patrick has a root canal, and so we can't do it when we're thinking of doing it. So all that to say, if you're following us on any of the socials, you will be able to know when we're going to do a show, when we're going to go live. So make sure you're doing that. Other than that, Patrick, we will see you guys next week.
kids are feeling good all the time.